Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
No, it's not. It's Nasal Man.
No.
It's Nasal Whistle Man.
Can you hear this?
Well,
I've got a whistle this time.
According to a bunch of our listeners, we can hear it, actually.
Oh, you've got a nasally whistle at 51 minutes, Hayden. All right, Andrew. I've cleared my nose this time.
Bloody listen to you do your talking with your nasal passage, shall we? Go on.
Yeah. Anyway, hello.
So we sorted it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I guess I'll find out.
Well, they'll be writing in. Well, actually, I heard your nasal passage go in 47 seconds.
Don't care, I'm at Centre Parks.
Oh, we're going to Centre Parks, baby.
Yep.
Should we just dive straight in?
Yeah, go on then.
So it's been half term. I was actually going to start with this, so maybe I'll get your opinion. I did a poll on Facebook. No, I didn't. I don't go on Facebook.
Maybe I'll get your opinion.
I'm below the age of 40, so I don't go on a... Imagine if we do a whole podcast where you just refuse to give me your opinion on anything.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I don't know.
What do you think?
Anyway, on Instagram, because like I said, I'm not a boomer, I did a little poll because we get an extra week off in this half term. It's one of these phenomena where you, in education, where some schools put all their insets day back to back. So 5 insets. I don't know what I said. What did I say?
You said you put the S. You pluralized insets rather than days. Insets day.
Just one day. Really long day.
All of the insets in one day.
We put all of our inset days in a row, so we get an extra week off. But the payoff is obviously normally on an inset day you have to do training. So our payoff is you have to do a club in our school, and you know, apparently it all works out. We looked at the calculator of directed time and stuff,
and we do a twilight every
once
a term.
So we do training, but we get an extra week off. So I just put a thing out there about clubs. I said, who does clubs then? Because it's kind of leads on with the fact we're going to get this extra week off. We get to go Centre Parks where the price is lower. Like it works out really well for everyone. And anyway, I did this thing about clubs, and it really interested me that what percentage of people do you think don't do a club and don't have to?
Oh, like 70, 80%.
Yeah, it was only 50.
Oh.
I was really shocked. I thought it would be much higher.
Yeah, I thought our school was... I've never heard of it before.
We
went to our school. I was like, oh, this is a weird thing that no one else does.
So a whole bunch of people have said on this poll that they have to do a club. And that was 20% of people. And I thought, 1 in 5 schools, 1 in 5 teachers I just told, you have to do a club. And that really shocked me. And then we had a whole other bunch, about 18% said they don't have to, but they do a club anyway. Right. Classic.
Yeah.
And then it's bumped up to about 60% now. No, and I don't have to. I just thought it was interesting. What would you rather then? Because we've done both. Would you rather have to do a club and then get an extra week off?
Yeah.
Or
that one,
or where you don't have to do a club, but you have to do inset.
Oh, I'll take the week off every time.
Yeah,
honestly, it's amazing.
There's something about time off being clumped together which feels so much better.
In term time, like you said, everything's cheaper.
Yeah,
that's basically it. Really, everything's cheaper. I can actually go on holiday and not be really annoyed and bitter the entire time that you're paying 3 times as much as anybody else. It's kind of like me going to the dentist and being an NHS patient.
Sorry, dental listeners, can you please
listen? You just need to switch off dentists. Yeah. A bit like that, isn't it? Really, me going and paying extra for the same procedure that the guy got just before me.
Yeah, it's just like that, Hayden.
Are you
remotely bitter about this?
No, I'm not. I don't even think about it anymore.
Well, do you know what's great?
What?
I saw Labour doing some local canvassing around this area, and it's hilarious. Like, whatever you think about politics, it's so funny when people are trying to get your vote. Yeah, because they just say stuff.
Yeah, they'll say anything.
They just say stuff, and there's no explanation how they're going to do it. And top of the list for this local area was, we'll get you a dental practice.
I literally saw that as well. And do you know when I saw it?
How?
That, honest to God, the day that I was going to the dentist, I'm not even joking. And I was like, I can't believe
this. You see why? Because people like you would sit and be like, yeah, I'm going to vote for you. Yeah. And honestly, you just see straight through it now. You're like, what do you mean you're going to get me a dent? What on earth are you talking about?
Speaking of politics, just for a minute, I know we're going to talk about it loads anyway, but I know I sent you this last night, but I just have to shout out on TikTok, Labour and Conservative have both made TikToks recently. Oh, God. And obviously they've just got a bunch of young people making them because they're proper just silly, like
proper meme
culture.
Yeah.
And I was cracking up last night looking through the Labour.
Are they actually funny?
They're genuinely funny. Right. Genuinely. They obviously have stuff interspersed with real little clips, like trying to get people to actually vote for them. But there's so many memes on there, and one of them that I just couldn't stop laughing was Labour made this meme of Rishi Sunak, right? And he's writing in something. So they were like, oh, Rishi Sunak's diary.
Is this actually Rishi writing in something?
Yeah, it's just like a stock footage of him writing in something. I don't know what he's actually writing.
Probably one of his actual videos.
Yeah. But they were cutting away to an over-the-shoulder shot, and it was just him in terrible handwriting, writing about really bad policies. He was gonna go to going to go to Wales or Ireland or wherever he went to and ask him about the rugby or something like that. And in brackets, didn't know they didn't qualify, and they were just absolutely rinsing him for this stuff. And the Tories have now obviously been like, well, we've got to do it as well, and they've started making memes back.
The problem is it's boomers making them.
You can really tell as well. It's so funny. And they're just like copying the Labour ones, but doing it back. And everyone's like, come on, you're getting roasted in this TikTok war.
And also, who do they think they're pandering to? Like, you can't simultaneously tell them they have to sign up for national service. But also, here's a funny meme, though. Here is a funny meme.
Surprise, surprise.
Rishi Sunak turning up to your 18th birthday telling you you've got to go to war. Surprise, surprise.
So yeah, really, really funny. If you're on TikTok, check out the Labour page.
I did see one because obviously, politicians do ridiculous things simply just to get in the news during all the build-up. Yeah. So they're like I think Keir Starmer was serving ice cream the other day, and Ed Davey was like falling off a paddleboard and all this kind of stuff. And there was one where Labour made a meme out of it, and it was Rishi Sunak went to a football day, and Rishi Sunak was dribbling around these cones, and at one point the ball hit the cone and stopped him, and he was like he tripped over. And the caption was, when you're trying to convince people you can run the country, but you get tackled by a cone.
That's so good. So basically, apparently, right, the Conservatives obviously run annoyed that they're getting rinsed on TikTok. They've spent loads of time complaining and like reporting all of the Labour videos to get as many of them as removed as possible.
Oh, really?
So Labour are obviously now taking the mick out of that. They're like, "Oh, spending all your time running the country, are you? Or trying to get our silly memes removed on TikTok? Like, what's wrong with you?"
You nearly swore then, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I don't swear ever.
Stuttering over your words.
No, I never swear.
Okay, no.
Never swear.
The other one was Rishi Sunak went to Southampton to on the second day of his thing to launch his campaign. Oh, yeah. And it was where the Titanic was built or something. Or went to Ireland, mate. No, went to Ireland where the Titanic was built. And a reporter just said, is it a good metaphor for your campaign that you're in the birthplace of the most famous sinking ship in history? And he was like, oh. Bearing in mind the day before he announced the general election in an absolute downpour. Soaking wet.
What an analogy.
The only thing I'd seen beforehand of these TikToks were from I listened to my podcast.
You listened to your podcast.
My God, I can't speak. My politics podcasts.
Yeah.
And it's the rest is politics. Alistair Campbell, Roy Stewart. And the only thing I'd heard was from them, and they were like, it seems quite juvenile, really. It seems quite. Is it a bit childish? It's a bit not really serious politics, is it? I was like, yes, of course.
That's the point.
It's not for you.
Yeah, it works for Labour because all their voters are under 20. So
exactly. You know what? I saw a fact. We'll finish this little chat about politics right now.
Yeah.
For this second.
We will.
But I saw a stat, and it was astounding to me. And I think this was true in the last election. If only people under what age do you think? Mm-hmm. So if we only allowed people under a certain age, you're going to guess what that age is to vote.
Yeah.
At what point would we have to cut it off and then Labour would win? Labour would get more votes.
I see what you mean.
So let's say, obviously, if you cut it off at under 20,
yeah,
Labour would have a huge majority.
But if it was under 80, right, then actually you begin a huge population of Tory
So
voters.
at what point do you think, at what age do you think the tide turns over where more there'd be more Conservatives?
Let's think about this. Millennials, I imagine all millennials up to 40. I think up to 40 is safe. I'm going to go 45.
60.
Oh, really? More than I thought.
60.
Yeah.
So if only people under 60 voted, Labour would have more votes than the Conservatives. Yeah. The Conservatives win because old people go and vote.
Well, I don't know what the population split's like. How much of our population is over 60?
There's a lot of people who are over 60 because of aging population and stuff.
Yeah.
But the biggest contributing factor is the fact that they've got nothing else to do. They're retired. They live for this stuff. They read the Daily Mail every day and they go and vote on voting day. Young people don't go and vote. And that's one of the biggest points.
Or read the Daily Mail.
The biggest point, though, to be made from that is that if you're listening to this and you think, oh, yeah, I don't really like Conservatives because my life's absolutely crap for the last 15 years, register to vote and then go and vote for someone. Honestly, if more people did it, it wouldn't even be close. It blew my mind.
Go and vote for Keir.
No, and this is I'm going to say one more thing whilst we're here. The thing that's annoying me slightly, because I suppose 5 years ago in the last election, I was very pro-Labour. I liked a lot of the policies that Corbyn was coming out with in terms of social mobility and helping poor people. I'm very much for that. Currently, I don't think that there's many policies for Labour that are exciting me at all. Like the prospect of a Labour government doesn't fill me with like actual excitement of what's going to happen. Yeah. What fills me with excitement is getting rid of the Tories. And what kind of annoys me a little bit is when people will see me say something like, if you don't like the Tories, make sure you vote them out. And then they go, oh, another pro-Labour lefty. Or do you think Labour are going to do anything? It's like, I never said that. No, I don't know. I don't know that. But what I do know is, I don't want these guys to carry on. Yeah. These guys who completely rinsed us and like, if you look at anything they've done, honest to God, and you mentioned the other day, the contracts and stuff, that alone is enough for me to be like, oh my goodness me, get all of these people out.
The contracts?
Yeah, the PPE contracts, the COVID contracts, where they just literally line the pockets of their mates. Yeah. They made up companies, like, and within 2 months they were getting a contract for PPE that was never delivered and just made billionaires.
Hundreds of millions, yeah.
It's like, cool. That's enough. Goodbye. And they're really trying their hardest to separate out, aren't they? Like, Rishi's a new guy.
Yeah.
And what fascinates me is Rishi's coming out now like, we've got this amazing new GPs policy. We're going to get all the What have you been doing?
Yeah, you've had 14 years to do that.
You could have done that 6 months ago. 3 months ago. Yeah. You decided to make this election come up. You could have not made this election come up and done the stuff you're saying. How could anyone buy this stuff is beyond me.
Yeah, it's mental. Yeah.
Anyway.
But I feel the same with Labour as well. Like we were joking about the dentist.
Yeah, sure.
I read that pamphlet that I got from my door that had the 5 things that he was going to do. And I was like, I don't believe any of this. Like, you might do. It would be nice if you did. But everyone running is obviously going to say this. Who would run and not say that?
And not being funny.
Meaningless.
That our local candidate for Labour, who would be the one to replace the Conservative candidate, is one person out of 650 MPs. Like, she might stand up and be like, we need dentists in Planet.
Sit down.
Okay, sorry, we're doing everything else we were going to do. Yeah. It's just not, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But my final point, I just want this current government to not be the government anymore. Yep. Then we can reset and moan at the next lot. Okay? Yeah, I know not much is going to change.
No.
But I realise that, and I'm not going to sit and moan about it online. I'm just going to, okay, obviously it's going to be quite similar, but I'd rather the other people have a go. Anything else happened this week?
Let me just check my notes. Oh yeah, the funny thing about you. So we went on, we went on a night out with our tutoring business. We took our tutors out. Not all of them could come, but we took a good bunch of them out.
Yeah, the good ones good.
All the good ones came. Oh no, that's not true.
The local ones.
The local ones, yeah. And
we do have tutors all over, actually, don't we?
We do all over the country. We do all over the country. Yeah. We're global. We're not. And we went to somewhere called Boom Battle Bar. So if you've heard of that.
You could have sounded more boomerish. Went to somewhere, let me just check my notes and my spectacles. Went to somewhere called Boom Battle Bar.
It turns out they did some fun things at this place, some activities. Anyway, it was pretty cool. We did some axe throwing, we did some darts, we did some crazy golf, shuffleboard, and a bit of karaoke at the end. But we made it a bit of a competition. There was 8 of us. And
I don't think anyone was taking it seriously.
Well, I don't know, because on the way there, it's funny actually, because you kept going on about how it was a competition between me and you. We were going to have 3 others with each of us and teams of 4.
Don't know.
Dylan, honest to God, he's quite competitive, and I will say he's generally pretty good at stuff. Like, you're good at golf, you're good at sports, and you play a lot of sports, and you're very competitive. You like them. We go squash, and I play squash for ages. You play squash for 2 weeks, and then start beating me, and I get really annoyed. Absolutely dreadful. Like, you lost literally everything. Like, you came 8th place in most stuff.
Yeah, I threw 10 axes in a row, right? Yeah. And I didn't land one after my second axe. Yeah. So I had to 8 times in a row walk up on your own when you're doing axe throwing, obviously, with everyone else watching you. 8 times in a row I had to throw it and it just bounced out. And I just progressively was like, my smile was getting less and less.
It was
convincing.
Really awkward because I got 8 in a row. Bang. Like, literally.
You were really
3
good.
points. 3 points. 3 points. Bang in the middle.
And then
you
came second.
Did in the end, yeah.
And then
Andrew, Mr. Nose Whistly, pointer outer.
When we said we said the good ones could come, well. But yeah, he brought a game with him that we were playing, and it's called Don't Get Got, where you get a secret mission. Basically, well, you get 6 secret missions that you've got to try and complete during the night, and once you get 3, you win or something like that. But the person running our game, who was like our host for the evening, she was called Chloe.
This man.
Andrew just decided randomly during our axe throwing halfway through to give her a secret mission, just one. Just like, there you go, we're doing this.
And it was random. He just let her pick out of the bag.
Yeah, had a bag, proper teacher, had like a plastic wallet full of them. Yeah. Really organised. And he took one out. And so she took it, and we just obviously all forgot about it. Finished our game. Andrew won. Who came last?
You came last.
I came
8th
last
place. You.
out of everyone. And so she said, right, okay, winner, who was it? And it was Andrew. Put his hand up. Cool. Comes to the front. Loser, who was it? And I was like, yeah, I'll put my hand up, shall I? Me, awkward. She went, right, come to the front. And then she got, they had like these jugs of water that you could press down to add pressure and it shot water out.
Yeah.
So
a spray bottle for anyone north. A spray bottle.
We had a bottle of water which, when applied pressure,
unbelievable. You press this button and it just like sprayed out. It was crazy. You called air pressure or something. Yeah, go on.
And, so she gave it to Andrew and said, right, winner gets to spray the loser. And I was like, oh, bloody cool. Brilliant.
Typical.
So Andrew's there. He sprays me, water all in my face. And then Chloe just goes, yeah, made that up completely. That's my secret mission.
Yeah,
what?
It was.
So her secret mission was to get someone else to spray someone else with water in the face.
Yeah.
And she did it. Like, and it was just everyone fell for it, and so that wasn't even a thing. So I'm stood there with water dripping off my face, and I was like, "Well, so this isn't a normal thing to happen? No, it's just soaking wet. Thank you."
She just happened to have a spray bottle filled with water there, and I was like, "Why do you even have that if it's not for like some sort of forfeit?"
Yeah, they watered the.
And she was like, "Oh yeah, we
board.
just sprayed down the board." And I was like, "That's so funny that you got that card. It was perfect for you." And Dylan was wet. And then from that point, he just carried on losing. And the best bit was the moment that I saw your soul leave your body, like your eyes sort of like they were dead.
I was done.
There was nothing there. There was nothing left, right? It was when we were playing Crazy Golf, which was like 3 or 4 games in at this point. And Dylan spent a solid like 30 seconds completely ripping one of our tutors for all they had to do. Like, you had to hit the ball up this hill that was at maybe like 2 foot with this massive wide opening to go into this metal tube. It was just a silly one at the end.
She missed like 5 in a row. It was funny.
She missed 5 in a row, and at one point even like managed to chip the ball on top of this metal thing.
Yeah.
And we were all laughing at her, and Dylan was really taking the mick. And then Dylan went up last and honestly did the exact same thing. He missed like 5 or 6 times, chipped it on top of the thing.
She was loving it,
and she was absolutely rinsing you back. And I just looked at him thinking, this is the man that plays golf. This is the man that bought a nice set of golf clubs and goes to the driving range, and he can't putt a ball 2 foot into a massive hole.
It's good fun, Hayden. And the last thing I will say about that evening is we ended in karaoke.
That was
and we're a bunch of teachers sat in a karaoke room having a drink, and we found cauliflower's fluffy on the karaoke machine. I made a reel about it. Go to our Instagram at Teach Sleep Repeat Podcast. Yeah. 5 teachers sat there. I've got the mic, and we're literally singing cauliflower's fluffy and cabbage is green. And then you just go,
cabbage is green. Is that in the video?
Yeah. Because obviously Hayden has no idea what's on our socials.
Yeah, don't watch it.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. So good night out.
Yeah, and jokes aside, our tutors are unbelievably good. All of them, aren't they?
Yeah, at beating you in games.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Trying to be sentimental for a minute, Hayden.
They are great, and we're very lucky to have.
And we're really passionate, I think, about providing tutoring opportunities to these people, because we know how. I don't know about you, but in terms of teaching, I just think it's unbelievable the amount of work you do for the money you get paid for this kind of stuff. Yeah. So providing those opportunities, I hope they think that it's a good deal. I'm sure it is. Yeah. But they're great. They're amazing. That's all.
And if they don't, well, just that's as far as Dylan's sentiment goes.
You're a teacher. Suck it up.
Yeah.
Go with it. So yeah.
Christ. Anyway,
I hope you all get the gist of this light-hearted, funny, joking thing. Please. I'm not.
Dylan said to me before this episode, Hayden, stop waffling. You got to stop waffling so much, because when I make little clips for Instagram, you often go on and on. Look, listen to him.
Let's move on to the main bulk of our episode. Hayden, play the jingle. Right, so you've seen the title of the episode. Do we need a new national curriculum? It's been about 10 years since the last one was introduced. Obviously, it was introduced by the previous coalition government from 2010, who were working on it for a few years. Michael Gove spearheaded it. Lots of flack at the time from people in education. But there's just this feeling now that perhaps with a new government coming in, would it be something sensible to do? So before we dive into the actual realistic side of it, which will be the bulk of this conversation, just on the surface level of our current national curriculum, what are your thoughts on it? Is it suitable? Do you think that it does the job, or do you think that it should be replaced?
I don't think it's a bad national curriculum. I don't want to jump in and be like, oh yes, obviously because the Tories made it, or whoever made it, whatever. I think there are some areas that could definitely be changed, some areas that could be maybe improved, and some areas that could be scrapped. So I don't think it's a terrible curriculum. If I think about our kids, right, the average kid, they get a pretty decent education. especially through primary school. I suppose we can't really talk too much about secondary school. We know a little bit about the curriculum, but primary school is our thing. I don't know. That's my gut. It's a bit all over the place. I know it's not a very good answer. Sorry, but how are you feeling about it then?
Honestly, it wasn't really something I was thinking about until someone else brought it up. Again, I think it was people who aren't in education. They were talking about the general election because obviously there's loads of content out there at the minute of people just talking about what's going on at the minute because there's going to be a new government. And it was something someone mentioned, again, who wasn't in school. And they said they were asked a question in a Q&A special. And they're just like a political analyst. And the question was, should we have a new national curriculum? You know, it's been 10 years. Is it getting a bit old? Could we update it? Could we modernise it? And it's very much in the prism of pure, I guess this is where the question comes from. It was like pure utopian kind of view of the curriculum of, you know, of course we could have a new curriculum. Do you not think we could modernise how we teach history and our role in the world, move away from the whole empire thing and not have a Britain-centric thing where Britain was always amazing and look at these things we did. And like, I couldn't really disagree with anything this person was saying in terms of it would, obviously modernising the curriculum in that way would be good. Because even though it was only 10 years ago, I would argue it's quite an old-fashioned curriculum.
Yeah.
I think Gove was rooted in his own experiences of education and the private schools, you know, that he went to and that kind of, it was almost like coined a Victorian almost kind of a Victorian era one. I think someone mentioned before one part of this new push of the curriculum was like it was literally given as an example by the government to how you could punish children as a sanction would be laps around the field. There's the whole thing, and it was like, I mean, people are basically saying this is so old. Like, of course you shouldn't punish, have exercise as a punishment. Yeah. It's so backwards.
Yeah,
and that kind of sticks with me a little bit. And I was like, cool. And on the surface, I don't think anyone suggesting we should change the curriculum. I don't think you could say to someone that's automatically bad. And I would argue that you could make it good, but then you end up in the realm of like realism. And it's like, okay, well, how would we make sure it was actually good? Yeah. What would be defined as good? Like, what should we get rid of? What should we do? That's where it gets murky, I think.
What do you think needs more attention? The core curriculums or the wider curriculum stuff, in your opinion? Like, for anyone listening that's not maybe in the teaching world, core curriculum, we're talking about maths and English mainly, and also science, even though that's kind of, to be honest with you, been sort of pushed out of the core curriculum, really. So let's just think about maths and English then. What do you think needs more work, maths and English, or kind of everything else?
I think they both need work that's very different,
right?
And I think it should be separated completely. So in general, you know, do we need a national curriculum? I don't think we need one, but I think it could be done really well. So now we're gonna, like you're saying, we're thinking about what actually needs to be done. Then I would separate maths and English to the rest of the curriculum. I honestly would, especially for primary. And anyone who looks at the curriculum will kind of probably know what I'm going to say straight away, because if you look at the national curriculum, the national curriculum is about 200 pages long for primary school. Okay, I'm going to rough spitball here. Around 60 odd pages is maths. Around 60, 70 odd pages is English, and then there's quite a few pages for science as well.
Yep.
And then when it comes to the wider curriculum, the geography curriculum is literally 1 or 2 sides. The history curriculum is 1 or 2 sides.
For the whole of primary school.
So we're talking like 1/60th of the maths. So when you ask me what we should do for core curriculum, English and maths, my gut instinct is it needs to just simply be stripped back.
Yeah.
I think the content, there's nothing on there that I think's bad. I think it all makes progression sense. I think it's fine. What I would say is, though, it probably goes up to, I reckon, year 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Like, what, honestly, like, I would add some extra stuff, obviously, in 7, 8, and 9, but not just that curriculum. But there are certain things in this English and maths curriculum I would spread out and I would drop from primary school.
Yeah.
Now, my problem with that is, although I think most teachers will be in agreement with that statement, that will never happen when a new government comes in.
Of course it won't. Well, why not? Tell me. There's an obvious reason why, but you tell me.
It would be such an easy thing to do, right? In terms of, it wouldn't really cost anything. You would just say to teachers, look, don't do this, focus on the other stuff, which teachers are pretty much probably doing anyway. The problem is it's horrendous optics.
Yeah.
If you're a government and you come in, and you know whether Labour want to try and do something for education or not, if they come in and literally go to teachers and say, right, what do you want? You want English and maths stripped back? Okay, yeah, just drop all that stuff. Crack on.
Yeah, an easier curriculum.
Horrendous, yeah. An easier curriculum. Can you imagine what the Daily Mail would
I'll be the Tories. They're de-skilling our children.
Yeah.
That's what they'd say. You wouldn't hear the end of it, would you?
And there's no way they do that. They literally, it would be political suicide.
Even though hilarity is kind of what's needed. Yeah. I mean, English is actually the more obvious one to me.
Yeah.
Having taught Year 6 English for a couple of years now, I just can't get over the fact that they have to be perfect writers by the end of year 6. And I'm not exaggerating. If you're not in education, I'm not just being like, oh, classic teachers moaning, exaggerating about of course they're not perfect writers. They've got years at secondary school yet. I'm not joking. They have to be expected at the end of year 6.
Which is just age expected. Where any child should be.
Yeah, it's where they're all supposed to achieve. They're supposed to achieve that. You have to be a perfect writer. You have to have mastered all punctuation. Your sentences have to be consistently, perfectly coherent, with a wide variety of sentence structures. It's just mad to me. I always think, and maybe I could be humbled by a secondary school teacher, but I genuinely don't understand what they do at secondary school after that. I was like, what's the point? Some of the writers in my class now, I look at them, I think, cool. I couldn't write at that level by university level. I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it yet. And they were already writing at that level, and I'm like,
Is there not an argument that that's a bad thing though, that you couldn't write that like that? Until
maybe, yeah, because they can, and maybe if I was pushing a different way, I could have done. That's always that counter argument. But what I don't understand is, what on earth are they supposed to do at secondary school after that? And
you don't mean secondary school aren't doing anything.
No,
you mean we've done it. We've completed writing almost.
And the problem with that is I don't actually think many children are getting to that level. We've got this age expected, and the whole idea is all children, or as close to as all children as possible, are supposed to be able to reach this standard. But realistically, I think less than 50% of children can actually reach that standard. So we've just got this crazy high bar. And we can talk about all the reasons that, maybe the stats still look all right. Like the national average is like 70% still. And I'm like, yeah, because teachers are on their knees bending rules to make this writing look good. It's like then the kids aren't really that level. We're just pretending. So it would look terrible if Labour came in, or whoever comes in, probably going to be Labour realistically. Yeah. And we're like, oh, we recognise this problem. They had a very logical head on. We can see actually that the standards for year 6 children are just absurdly high. It puts loads of pressures on teachers. It encourages cheating because no one can actually reach this standard to a national average of 70% or whatever, really. So we're going to strip it back. We've realised that they've got another 6 years of school after this, so we can probably slow down a little bit. And the year 6 standard is now more like maybe the end of year 4 standard. And you just need to get them really, really good at these things.
And maybe more creative and more interesting and more imaginative with their writing.
Yeah, I always compare that, and I know I've said this before, but I always compare my year 7 books with what the kids do now, because I just think it's fascinating how when I was at school, it was about creativity. And that's one thing that was good about my writing in year 7. It was really creative, had nice ideas in it, but the spelling and punctuation wasn't that good. I still had lots of things to learn, and I learnt them at secondary school slowly. And I just think, I look at that and I compare it with some of the kids writing now, which is really robotic, extremely formulaic, but perfectly punctuated. No creativity. They struggle with creativity so much.
Because it's not built in to teach them how to be creative.
Yeah.
We can't sit and moan as teachers and be like, oh God, they can't come up with any ideas themselves. It's like, yeah, because we spent the last 3 weeks talking about where prepositions go in a sentence and how to add ed to a word to make it past tense. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Honestly, that's all they're thinking about is the actual, building blocks of how to build that sentence. Yeah. They've got no outer level stuff of thinking of the whole picture because we do so much sentence level work and how to make the colon go in the right place. Oh, because colons have to join two things together. Okay, cool. Well, what's actually going to go in your sentences though?
Yeah, what's the interesting bit? I've met a lot of anxious kids over the years, a lot of anxious kids who are so drilled into them that they have to get the punctuation and like structure right that they actually just feel afraid to just explore and be adventurous with their language and stuff because they know they'll get ripped apart because the curriculum encourages ripping apart kids who aren't doing the punctuation stuff right, rather than, oh, well done, this is really creative, let's just not worry about the commas for now, learn that in another year.
Yeah, I've always found it really interesting how writing in year 6, okay, or any year group I suppose, but we're talking about year 6 end of Key Stage 2, there's almost this bell curve, right, of there's children at what would be regarded as the lower end of the assessment who might be below or working towards not quite at the level. And they would be kind of one of the big things that might be put onto them is that your writing's not coherent. It doesn't follow the rules properly. It doesn't have full stops in the right places. These aren't full sentences. This doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite make sense. Then you enter the bulk of the bell curve where, children have worked really hard to make sure it makes sense. There's not much reward for imagination or anything like that, but they're using the GPS rules correctly. It's awesome. It makes sense. Like, nice. You ticked all the boxes you're expected. Yeah. Then the bell curve comes back down again. And it's almost like we enter the realm of before expected, where now greater depth children, as long as they've shown they can do all that stuff in the middle, to obtain greater depth, which is insanely hard to be end of year 6 and actually be greater depth, you've kind of got to regress and challenge those norms and experiment with things and add what people always say, flair, which is this really undefined term, which just, what do greater depth writers need to have? Flair. Like it could be, experimenting with word meaning. It could be experimenting with vocabulary. It could be experimenting with sentence length. It could be experimenting with, in speech, not quite using the right spellings because you're writing down an accent or something
the formality changes.
The formality shifts. And it's like, cool. So we recognize that kind of going against the grain and really pushing the boundaries.
Being creative.
And being creative is an incredibly vital skill to being a well-rounded writer. But we completely ignore it until children can do all the robotic things well. And it just seems so backwards to me.
The building blocks are wrong, aren't they?
Yeah, completely wrong. Because what we should be encouraging is a love for reading, right, separately in reading lessons, and a love for novels and a love for children's writing, which a lot of the time doesn't follow these really archaic rules that we have to follow in our own writing. Because I've had children put their hand up and say, there's no comma after that fronted adverbial. In this book by an award-winning writer, Michael Morpurgo, it's oh, well, maybe it's not that important. And it's just, you're right, it's just so backwards. And I think we should be building this up at the same time. If children are showing that they're developing their imagination and their, genre understanding of like, okay, well, clearly when this child wrote a news report, that was very different to when they wrote an adventure story, which was also very different to when they wrote a non-fiction text, like a fact file. That's awesome. And also they're kind of developing their use of capital letters and they're developing their use of commas in the right place. That should be the progression. It feels like at the minute it's simply just look at the GPS scale. Are they doing all of the GPS things correctly?
Oh my god! It's the only thing that's important.
Have they built this entire tower properly first? We should probably add some imagination and some flair into this.
Yeah. And do you know what? Good teachers around the country do that genuinely. But my problem with the system is, I don't think it should rely purely on really, really, really good like English teachers who just. I don't know. That sounds silly in a way, but
you take it into their own.
Yeah,
that's one of the points I was going to make about the curriculum. So let's make that point right now because I think you're making a really good point, and it's almost a reason why we don't necessarily need a new national curriculum, is because teachers really know this curriculum like the back of their hand now. We understand it well. We've put a lot of work into this curriculum, especially in the first few years. Moving maths to a mastery approach and going through it that way. Mastery, when my northern roots came out then. English, the spelling rule completion and the new writing assessment stuff. Teachers have really taken it, and I would argue have molded it so that we're still meeting a national curriculum, but in a way which is suitable for our children. Yeah. And essentially what you're saying there is, I don't think there are many teachers out there who actually completely ignore the imagination aspect.
No.
The problem we have here, the beef we have, is it's not rewarded.
Yeah, the default position, if you were just to do the curriculum, doesn't encourage it.
So maybe you could expand on what you're saying there, because in general, I would say one of the arguments against the whole new national curriculum is we're kind of finally now in a pretty good place with the curriculum, where lots of work's been done, teachers know what they need to do, we're doing it. So what would you say to someone who says, let's not change it then, we kind of know what we're
doing? I agree, because the massive, biggest con to this is workload, isn't it, really? We're at a tipping point in teaching already where people are going on strike multiple times because workload is so dire in this job. Realistically, if we take out of the ideology of all of this and actually just think about the real world, the last thing teachers need right now is a complete overhaul of the entire curriculum, like maths, English, and all of the wider stuff. That would be mental, really, wouldn't it? So I guess if you ask me in a realistic point of view whether I think we need a new curriculum, my answer is no.
Yeah.
And that's not because I don't think it can be improved. It's purely because of that point.
And I would add to that, I suppose, that what you're saying there, if it is a workload related thing, the only way we could really fix that is to strip back the curriculum, which the new government will never do.
No,
so it's here are the two options, okay? Neither of them are good.
No.
The increased curriculum completely changed is not good for our workload and retention, which is in crisis. But then the actual thing we need, which is a stripped back curriculum, that's bad for the government who will come in.
Government optics, yeah.
So neither needs to happen.
And unfortunately, the government's optics will always matter more than what children need. So
completely
to them.
Yeah.
So it will never, ever, ever not be the case.
Do you think, very generic question here, I don't expect a long answer, but do you think if Labour get voted in and we have a brand new government, do you think things will actually change in teaching?
No. We said this. Remember, we did an episode on this before, and my answer was no.
Want you, after talking now and just a bit more.
I've just lost faith, I think, in humanity. No, not in humanity. In this government, I think because we've lived our entire adult lives under the Tories.
And just it felt like every year was eating away.
Yeah,
getting progressive. Nothing was getting better.
It's just, I don't know. To me, it's gone too far. I think we needed it to be fixed like 10 years ago if we had a chance. It's like global warming. You know how they say we've kind of gone past the point of no return now. We can only just like help to make things better. I kind of feel like that now as well. I can't see a way that any government could come in now and actually fix anything, because we are in so much debt. We've got into such bad state with the country where money is just being drained out of every possible orifice of this country. Do you know what I mean? This is a horrible analogy. I don't know. I just don't know what Labour could do. Like, it's like people often say, "Where's that magic money tree?" Yeah. And they're taking the piss. But there is also that part of me that's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The magic money tree is being used to send 18-year-olds off for national service. Unfunded.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure they could claw back a bit, but I'm like, I don't know what we need to do, because NHS is on its knees.
Yeah, this is the thing. We don't live in a bubble of just education.
No. All public services are absolutely, completely and utterly destroyed in terms of budget. And we've already had to make it work on the terrible budget, and it's still failing. It's like there's like a double whammy of they'd need so much money to fix it. It's like we need more staff, and they all need more paying, and we need all the equipment and resources as well, like for all of these public services. Like we've lost out on all of it. Yeah. We need it all at once to make it good.
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
So
it's not going to happen.
Oh, I don't know. It fills me with a bit of anxiety, actually.
Well, this is why I think they might edge towards introducing a curriculum, because from their point of view, a pro is that it's kind of a cheap way of going about making change. Yeah. Like it. Okay, of course you need to pay people to create the curriculum and implement it and stuff like that. But the overall budget spend on introducing a new curriculum would be much more manageable than actually fixing the retention and recruitment.
You also just don't need to pay them, because that's what the government. That's what we're used to in terms of.
But they won't need to pay teachers to do it. Absolutely, but they'll need to pay people to write the curriculum and things to go in there like that. It would obviously have a cost associated. I don't want to pretend it would be free, but when we compare it with what we actually need, which is if you were to restore teachers' pay to where it would be just in terms of in line with inflation, right? That is an incomparable figure.
It couldn't happen.
No. And that's why I feel quite pessimistic, actually.
Yeah, that's what I mean about it's too far gone. We could never repair it now, because our teachers' wage and educational staff wage has been eaten away at for so long. It's now impossible to get back to where it was.
But that's what winds me up, because they kind of you hear Labour talk about this, and rightly or wrongly, probably rightly to be fair, they say, with junior doctors going on strike, especially as another example, they want a 35% rise in their pay, and that's not a figure plucked out of thin air. That is where their pay should be if they hadn't been squeezed so badly over the last 10 to 15 years. Yeah. So that's what they want, pay restoration. That's the big thing. And if teachers want pay restoration, I think we're in the 20% or something like that.
Yeah.
Huge amount of money. And the problem I have is currently Labour can kind of rightfully turn around and say that's unreasonable.
Yeah,
we don't have that amount of money right now. The economy is not growing very well. Yeah. We can't fix 10 years of cuts in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. But then that is kind of the end of what they say. They're just like, so
we won't.
Nothing. And it's like, 10% then? 5%? A bonus?
Or like a 10-year plan or something?
Stripping back our workload maybe? But no. And in terms of the in terms of the health thing, Labour have simply said, no, sorry, that's unreasonable. By the way, we're going to clear the backlog. We're going to clear the NHS waiting list backlog. How? We're going to get staff. We're going to pay doctors to work overtime, like do evenings and weekend clinics to clear the backlog. Unbelievable. On Question Time the other day, a doctor was in the audience,
right?
And she's put her hand up because their shadow health secretary, Wes Streeting, who will be our health secretary of Labour Win, she basically said to him, I'm working loads already, because I do what teachers do.
Yeah.
Like I work an extra 10, 15, 20 hours a week anyway. And, we're still under huge pressure. And so who do you think exactly will take up these extra hours when I'm already in the GP surgery doing extra stuff?
Yeah.
And the answer was just, well, I've seen it work in my local hospital. And it was just like, sorry, there's a doctor in the audience, right? Telling you it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. You've lost all credibility.
Yeah, immediately.
And that's where already I'm just like, there's people who say it's just the same. I'm like, I can see why you think that.
Yeah.
Because they are very similar.
Well, it's probably the closest to being the same it's ever been, right? In terms of Labour and Conservative.
I would say so, but I still don't think they're the same. I still think they have different outcomes. But I can see why people will
they have different people backing them. It doesn't mean that do make an impact, but... Yeah. But they are close as ever, aren't they? Really?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of what's happened recently with moving towards the centre. So what I would say, thinking about this conversation in general, I would say we could both get behind a curriculum change. We could both understand why it might be needed. But what teachers say would be needed in this curriculum change to what might be actually be implemented by the government for various reasons, I don't think there's much of an overlap.
No, not really.
And I think that teachers have done enough with this curriculum to make it worthwhile. My general answer to that would be, nah, not at the minute. Just leave it. They've got a lot to fix before we just dive in and do a curriculum. Like you said, recruitment and retention. But what it comes down to then is if we're saying, okay, let's not change this curriculum then. Let's not do it right now. It would be crazy for us to say a new government come in and let's not do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
We speak enough about what needs changing. So I guess this question's evolved now into what would you want to happen then? What should we change in education?
Yeah. I think for a start, and I don't know if this is just goes with a previous point, but, and I know it comes with funding. I'm just going to ignore the fact that everything comes with money that doesn't exist. But it would be nice to have some equipment. End of sentence. It'd be nice to have some equipment in the school that isn't from the Blair government. Do you know what I mean? Like just a bit of an upgrade would be
iPads
nice.
And stuff. Lots of schools have iPads and laptops and things like this.
That was one push. There was an iPad push like around the new curriculum time about 10 years ago. I get that. We're still using those iPads, like first generation Apple things. I don't know. I always think of the school hall. Yeah. Every school hall in the UK looks the same. They've all got the wall equipment. They've all got the benches from 1994. Like it's all the same stuff. And I would just like a bit of effort into being like, okay, it's not Victorian times anymore. What do modern kids actually want? What's going to make them want to come to school and enjoy their time at school?
A school that's not crumbling because of the rat problem, or maybe a school where it doesn't leak.
Yeah, it doesn't leak.
We just do accept, don't we, of our school buildings that they are absolute crap.
Yeah, and there's no money to repair them. This is what I meant about earlier about, again, point of no return. They needed to be fixed 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we don't have the money to, if we fixed them all now, because they're so beyond repair, it would cost too much money. There's just unfathomable amount of money. We just wouldn't be able to do it.
We're at the breaking point, aren't we, of 10 years of neglect?
Yeah, I just don't know what's going to happen. Like, what actually happens when, because the schools are just getting worse and worse in terms of like the structure of them. They are just going to fall down.
Well, if you look at the problem with the rack, the concrete that was literally crumbling, right? The whole point of that is the ultimate version of this problem where that's horrendous and this should have been flagged up and fixed ages ago, but it wasn't because the whole school rebuilding scheme was cut and it just didn't happen, right? That's the ultimate version of that. What you've got to imagine is everything that comes below that level of small things in the school getting broken. If a boiler gets broken in a school, right, which is really just random, isn't it? That has to come out the budget and something else gets, dropped because of it. And my point is all of these small things, and I saw a BBC article the other day of a head who is now the janitor as well. So they don't have a site manager anymore.
Wow.
Because they wanted to save that money. The head does the site manager duties before and after his headship and during lunchtime.
Crikey.
Because his point was, if I hired a site manager, I'd have to get rid of maybe a teaching assistant.
Yeah.
I'd have to lower the resource budget. We wouldn't have the same thing for the kids.
Nuts,
so as a head teacher, he had to sit there and decide, I'm going to take this work on for X amount of value, because it means the kids can get their phonics scheme next year or something like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's like, that's completely broken. That there is, let's not faff around with a new curriculum. Okay. All of our, thought processes and stuff should go into fixing this issue where that's seen as
let's hire that man
idea.
A site manager. that's all the budget. We've got enough budget to fix that one.
Give
school.
him that site manager money. Yeah. But I just thought it was, and we've worked in schools where every school has this, and if you work in a school, you probably can think of that one or two people right now in your school who do this, where they honestly have 5 jobs. And if that person were to leave the school, your school would suffer huge amounts, because you would either have to get rid of those jobs and they don't exist anymore and hire one person because they're on one salary, or pay 5 people to do those jobs and your budget would be decimated.
Yeah. Just lucky that someone does it. Yeah. Well, we've got one in our school, haven't we? I know. You know who I'm thinking of. Yeah. Who just does everything, and it's like, God, you know what? When
goes in every Sunday.
Yeah.
Every Sunday.
When that person leaves, it's like, those jobs are all essential though.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do them.
Yeah. He just opened the school in the morning.
Yeah.
Does basically do site manager's job alongside our actual site manager.
Yeah.
Does basically do the SEN job.
Yeah.
Is basically a deputy head teacher. It's like they're 5 jobs.
Yeah. It's nuts.
It's unbelievable.
And it just relies on it. Our school system is so propped up, isn't it? I just imagine this.
Goodwill.
Imagine this picture of like all these shaky foundations. It's like they're going to crumble at some point, and the whole thing's going to just come down.
It's great because on the top we can just place new curriculum. And, that should fix
just chuck it
everything.
in. So thinking about that then. So let's go back to the ideological world where we can afford to have a new curriculum, and that's the thing we need. I think one of the things I do, just because it's always bugged me, and you might feel the same about maths, is actually do the whole curriculum. I feel like
you mean through to secondary?
Yeah, like in 2014 when all this mastery curriculum came in, it's like they got to year 6 and they're like,
ran out of money,
ran out of time, and then they kind of just never carried on.
No.
So now, up to year 6, the Key Stage 1 and 2 curriculum are amazing, I think, in terms of the mastery approach. I really like what they've done with it. I'm sure there's a few things we could fix. But then the kids go to year 7 and I've heard from so many parents over the years that come back and be like, yeah, my kid's kind of bored of maths now because they just haven't done anything new for a year. I'm like, oh, that's annoying because I spent ages trying to get them to like be like amazing at maths and be ready. And I hear that a lot. And basically the secondary school curriculum, I could be wrong. I'm not, but it doesn't seem to follow on from
I think you have to wait until almost year 10 to get into the really nitty gritty stuff.
Well, easy analogy. Me and you, literally, because we were looking at GCSE stuff.
The foundation paper.
We looked at the foundation paper, which is the easier of the GCSE maths.
Yeah, but it's still, you do a foundation paper. That's very fine.
You're still doing it at GCSE level, which is, I always forget what year it is. Year 11?
10.
Year 10.
10 and 11.
It's because it's 2 years, isn't it? I always get confused. Yeah. And we looked through it, didn't we? And I'd say 80% of the questions were just end of year 6 questions.
And I'd argue the rest of the questions were of the level that we could teach.
Yeah,
in year 6,
probably.
because we didn't teach it.
Yeah, or at least year 7 they could do it. It's like, what are they doing then?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought that was mental. I'd actually love to. I'd never do it because it's a waste of time and it's not the curriculum. But it'd be very fun if I just had a spare day, to give some of my mathematicians in year 6,
see if
my
they get the
expected level mathematicians, but I'd just give them the GCSE foundation paper and see if they get enough marks to pass it.
Yeah, that'd be
without
fun.
knowing the stuff they don't know yet, haven't been taught. Because that would just be mad.
And again, I don't know actually is foundation just one paper or 2 or 3. I don't know. But this one we found, it was genuinely like, what are the common factors of 12 and 18? And it was like, that's year 4.
Yeah.
That's
and you know
year
what?
4. And that's fine because you're testing the whole of the curriculum. It's the same when in the SATs paper, if you see a year 3 question, no one goes, oh, that's year 3 counting in 7s. It's like, okay, but it's a Key Stage 2 paper. GCSE, we're still testing to see if they can still do that stuff. I think that's fine. But you're right, the ceiling, we very quickly, rapidly get up to a year 6 level, and then it feels like the rate at which we're adding to that knowledge does slow down massively.
So that'd be the first thing I'd probably look at and just make sure the curriculum is actually fluent all the way from the beginning to the end of school. Anything you want to jump in with?
I heard on that
waffle.
they kind of ran out of money and time, but also that they then just decided to shove it all into Key Stage 2. So apparently, from what I heard, again, feel free to correct me, is that a bunch of the stuff that we find in the Key Stage 2 curriculum for maths actually initially would have been stretched over to year 7, 8 and 9 anyway. Right. So that kind of backs up what we're thinking of getting to that foundation level. We would add stuff in 7, 8 and 9, but they kind of went, oh, we ran out of money, just whack it, year 6, ends in year 6, which is why a lot of people say now, especially who've been teaching for a long time, that, what we're teaching kids in year 6... we used to teach them in secondary school, and what we teach in kids in year 4 is what we used to teach them in year 6. Everything got smashed down.
Yeah, it's true to an extent. There was stuff that got pushed out as well, wasn't there? I can't think of a good example now. Proportion, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That used to be in the year 6 curriculum.
Median.
Median, mode, range,
the
all that sort of
averages.
Stuff. That used to be in year 6, and that got pushed into secondary. So I don't think there was a little bit of thought there, which I think was a good thing that they went out, because year 6 kids don't need to know those things. To be honest with you, we still teach the mean average in year 6. They don't need to know that. They don't need to. They could do it in year 7, year 8, year 9.
And the question in the SATs is always, honestly, just like find the mean.
Yeah, and it's
like
very simple.
Just adding and dividing. They're not. I don't think they're actually applying it for what it's useful for.
No, like actual stats.
Actually finding out the average of something for a reason, and then for justifying something.
I agree.
So it's very much just like, here's a procedure, learn it. It's like
very standard.
That's pointless, really, because I think math should be embedded in what we're actually using it for.
Context and problem solving and real life context as well.
I do want to move on to another point. Unless you want something to say.
No, go on.
We kind of didn't go past core curriculum earlier. Did we? We kind of talked about core curriculum. Really. We need to strip it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So, what would you change with the wider curriculum then? Because I'm talking history, geography. And we've already mentioned how the curriculum is so tiny for those subjects.
Yeah.
That's quite broad. Teachers can kind of interpret it, a lot of it, however they like, in terms of they might get like, okay, in history, you have to go down British history over this time and an ancient civilization from around the world. That's not extremely broad, but then what you do with it is kind of up to you almost, as long as you go through these strands of civilization and power and invasion and stuff like that.
I'm going to say something, then I'm going to lead on to a point that I reckon is quite controversial, and I reckon you'll definitely disagree with. Wider curriculum.
My favourite kind of point.
I don't know if this has come from the curriculum, from the government down, or it's just like a culture that we've created in teaching or something. But I think the wider curriculum, all of those subjects you just mentioned, has become horrendously knowledge-based.
Yes.
To the point where it's just like the only thing that matters is remembering some stuff. And that's always just a memory test. And I hate that. And I don't think that comes from the curriculum. And I think because the curriculum is so vague, it has allowed for this weird culture to come in and be like, this is how we do history now.
Retrieval every day. 5 questions. Yep. Retrieval. Who was it that found King Tutankhamun's tomb? Who was it that Henry VIII married for the 4th time?
And I think that's because there are probably some big companies that have come in and filled that gap of where there's literally just no curriculum. And the curriculum's like, teach them history and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, that's the curriculum, is it? Thank you.
I would argue the curriculum is actually quite specific in that it wants you to look at the skills more.
Yeah. So this is what I find really hard to understand. Because I think if anything, if you were going to make any stance on the curriculum, it actually doesn't say to do the whole knowledge cramming thing. It actually says teach them about chronology, and history. Teach them about democracy and how that's changed over thousands of years. Like that cool. I think that's quite cool. Yeah. But I think what's happened is because the curriculum is so vague, companies come in because schools are desperate for schemes because we can't plan all this stuff individually. It's mental, right? And schemes come in and say, "Oh, we've done it this way," and then it works, and then that just kind of goes around other schools, and suddenly everyone's doing this crazy knowledge-based stuff. So here's my controversial point. I don't think there should be anywhere near as much freedom as there currently is to teach the curriculum the way it is. I think it should be considerably more prescriptive so that there's actually some standardization across schools. And just one point, because I'll let you come back to all of this, one point that makes me feel like this in general is that I hate the fact that you can work in 2 schools in this country, and one of them you'll end up having a mental breakdown at the end of it because the workload is terrible, right? You'll be off work sick, and the other one is like, oh, it's great, it's cushy here. I work 8 till 4:30 every day, and my life's great. My workload's great. My mental health's great. I hate the fact that can happen. It's the same job. You're getting paid the same thing.
And do you think that's down to the fact the afternoon curriculum is open to interpretation?
Not entirely, but I do think I think the lack of systems, I think the openness from the government would be like, yeah, just do what you want, schools. You've just got these crazy expectations to meet. Off you go.
Okay, so my point on that would be, firstly, you talked about, external companies coming in and providing schools with schemes because it's so vague. Mm-hmm. I understand that completely. I think schemes, again, it depends on the scheme. The scheme could be great, something you can just pick up and run with, and it could save you a lot of workload. I would argue, though, there's another strand that makes it problematic, and that's Ofsted. So it's insane, the system that we currently have, where our history curriculum is honestly 2 sides long. Like, if you've not looked at the history curriculum in a while, just Google the national curriculum for primary and scroll past the hundreds of pages until you get to history, and there's like 2 pages. Geography, 2 pages. DT, like 1 page. Something insane like that. Yeah. The issue is then, Ofsted have a framework that's almost longer than the curriculum, right? So the framework might be 2 sides. Yeah. It's like we're looking for this. And then Ofsted have this unbelievably high standard. And schools will hear stories of Ofsted coming in. We've experienced this, by the way. Ofsted coming in and saying, okay, what kind of materials did they use in this in the Bronze Age? What did they use to, obviously bronze.
Yeah.
But they might ask a very specific question. Okay, well, previously, what did they use and how did that change? And okay, well, what do they use now? What kind of weapons might they use? That's knowledge based.
Yeah.
And
when the kids don't know,
and the kids might not know, and they'll mark it down as a curriculum that's not enhancing them. So I would argue that the problem comes from things like Ofsted, where those incredibly high standards are set for knowledge, and schools panic. And schools buy into schemes.
That's a good point, actually. I didn't really think about that. It's not the curriculum, it's the Ofsted framework that does impact a lot of...
I would argue what we've just said there is the curriculum's pretty good. And I like the idea of us as professionals, as teachers, having that openness. And I would be reticent. I wouldn't like what you're saying, where it was incredibly prescriptive. I think we get enough of that for maths and English, and I understand why, because they are vital skills to being a member of society. You need to be able to interpret a timetable to get to work. You need to be able to buy stuff when you go shopping. You need to be able to read to do literally anything. So all of that stuff, okay, fine. I get why that's so prescriptive. I like the idea that when it comes to history, if anything, I want to give schools much more freedom to kind of go down roads they want to go down. I want to let them, do an extra term on the Roman Empire, because actually down the road from them, maybe Richard III was excavated, not Roman Empire, but something local has happened. Sure. Where it's like we can really jump on that, and it does allow for local study. But all I'm saying is, I think let's interpret the curriculum as it is. Then let's actually just do history for the sake of inspiring the children. and getting them to like these afternoon subjects. I would argue that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
With maths, most important thing, they can do the maths. I get why it's prescriptive. With English, most important thing, they can read. I understand that's really important. And I'd say with the writing, the most important thing is that they enjoy writing, they're imaginative, and eventually they get there. That's why we want to do the changes.
Yeah.
I would say, again, when it comes to the core curriculum, do they find history interesting? That should be the core.
Curriculum.
The wider curriculum. That should be the core of everything we're doing.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that should matter is at the end of that history curriculum, have they been inspired to go and find out more?
Yeah.
Or at least did they enjoy the process of learning that story? And also, can we then make the links with what's happening today?
Yeah.
Or make the links with what they learned last year in history?
So can I come back on that? Because I think I 100% agree. I mean, you've heard me on this podcast. I'm very, very passionate about the enjoyment of the subject is number one. So just controversially, I guess, again, I think the government could do that. I think there could be a system where it's like the government are quite strict on, this is how we teach these subjects, and you've got to stay within these boundaries rather than it's completely open and then everyone ends up buying in schemes that do the complete opposite. I think they could be a lot more like neatly packaged with the wider curriculum, longer, more in-depth curriculums, not prescriptive in terms of you have to teach Romans, but prescriptive in terms of the things that get rid of the knowledge-based curriculums that we buy in that we don't actually like that much, where it's like, no, that doesn't fit the national curriculum because the national curriculum is way more detailed and you can understand it more, and it's like it actually says in it, if you're not doing local studies, that's rubbish. So it's like, there you go, everyone has to do that now because we all agree that's good.
So who do you trust more to create a creative curriculum that kids enjoy, the government or the teachers?
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem, isn't it? I'm in my ideological world again, and I actually don't think the government will do it.
So my point here is then, I want the same outcome as you.
Yeah.
I think it should be a very open curriculum, which leaves room for inspiration for teachers to do good things that they're good at. I think what needs to change is how it's judged.
Yeah.
Change the Ofsted framework. Change what we're actually looking for.
So teachers aren't pressured into doing the rubbish
because
things.
why do we feel pressure to do these retrieval questions? Why do we feel pressure to buy these schemes in? 2 reasons. 1, workload's huge.
Yeah.
2, because Ofsted are going to rinse us.
Yeah, we heard from local schools that Ofsted rinsed their school for this thing, so now we buy in a scheme that fixes it.
They asked one of the students who, Anne of Cleves enjoyed seeing on her downtime. And they didn't know. No. So we need to know all of the facts about all of the things.
Yeah, scrap that trip. We need to teach this.
And I think why I go to history a lot of the time is because I did a degree in history.
Yeah.
I have a university degree in history.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the most important things I learned at university were how to interpret sources. Mm-hmm. The wider changes that came about because of people's opinions on things or governments or religious beliefs and stuff like that. And the stories, I remember the stories, but and it's about being critical. I think when you look at history, if it boils down to Britain invaded this country and then Britain made sure this thing happened and we traded with that and then Henry VIII seceded from the church. Cool. You can find that out whenever you want. If you're a child in a classroom, all you will really care about is the story. Make it a really interesting story.
Hook them on
it. If they want to find out more, they can. And do the important stuff. Like, we could modernize the history curriculum, in my opinion. It could be very much away from Britain ruling the world. It could be a really enriching experience for the children.
Sure.
Different cultures and stuff. Just encourage them. Just enrich them, and make it more interesting.
Sure. So back to my ideology. I think there's a wider... I want to discuss it more because I think you'll disagree with me and I just kind of want to have those conversations. So I was thinking about the government systemizing stuff more.
Sorry, I can hear your nose. Can you just... Go on.
My whistly nose. And not just the curriculum. I think your point was really good, actually. I agree. That conclusion was good. But in terms of other areas of the government, things that the government could systemize...
That's to prove you wrong again.
Yeah, probably. Here you go. How about this idea?
Go on.
You're going to hate this. I think the government should provide schools with a suggested, doesn't have to be followed, a suggested timetable that fits in. That actually fits in.
Okay.
Basically, I think the government should take the lead on saying, we tell you to do 900 hours of stuff a week. Well, rather than us just leaving it at that, here is how we think it can actually be done, and giving schools a suggested timetable to work from. They don't have to follow it, but the idea is, look, it can be done in like a standard 9 to 3:15 way. This is how we would do it. You can adapt it how you like, because obviously schools are different in terms of their times.
So you can adapt it or not?
You can adapt it.
Okay.
But
I think
they take the lead on it.
I think this is a fantastic thought experiment. That would never happen because I actually really get your point here.
Yeah.
Because what essentially you're saying is, we don't actually want this timetable from the government. What we want them to realise is their expectations are insane.
Yeah.
Because what I would argue is this timetable doesn't exist.
Yeah. So them doing it would strip back the expectations.
Exactly. I completely get what you mean, because that kind of comes in with the fact that the one thing we do need is a strict back curriculum, which will never happen because of optics. The government will never give us the suggested timetable because it simply does not work.
Yeah.
And it would be them admitting that the current curriculum doesn't work and needs stripping back.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when they don't strip it back, that's just either way they're screwed, basically.
Yeah.
So you've worded it in a way where I actually don't disagree with you.
Yeah, no, I changed it as I was doing it.
No, because what we're basically saying is here, okay, if you ask me to do all of this stuff, prove to me it can be done.
Yeah.
And they can't. Okay. No. And if they did, it would be awesome.
Yeah, what if they came out with like a 3-week timetable? They're like, if you follow it, and this, like, it's quite strict, but if you do it to the minute, you do actually get all of your allocated time in for all the subjects.
Do you know what? I'd be like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's find out. Let's do it and see. Because you need to have a bit of an open mind with this kind of stuff. If they did that and they were like, we are literally the government, by the way, and we literally inform Ofsted what to inspect. I know Ofsted are independent, but we are in charge of this.
Yeah.
We're going to judge you by this. I'm like, okay, cool.
Prove us.
Because the problem, that was current and problem, by the way, in one word. The current problem we have is that we all sit around and pretend everything's okay. And then it's all dandy pandy, and this lovely curriculum can be fit in. We've got all the. We all know that it can't happen, but we all still just crack on and pretend it can. And when Ofsted come in, we all put on a show. No, very rarely will anyone have the balls to say, "This doesn't work." By the way,
yeah,
I'm pretending. I'm pretending for you right now because this doesn't actually work. Because you want to see advanced progress in this child's reading. The only way we can do that is to do afternoon interventions with this child during their history time. So I'm going to pretend, because you're in this room, that we never ever take them out of the core curriculum because it's so important. And we know it can't possibly
the wider
happen.
Curriculum. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I keep getting those wrong. The wider curriculum, I just see the curriculum. The rest is core. But we don't take them out of the wider curriculum. We don't take them out of history in the afternoon. No, because of course we don't. History is so important. But we do, because we need to make sure they can read, because you're going to judge me on that instead.
It's such a farce.
So we all just pretend. It's just this make-believe world where everyone has a timetable in school which doesn't actually work. And please let us know if you have one that does work. But I'm pretty sure when you say it works, part of that will be, but we don't really do RE. So that doesn't work then, does it? Honestly, it's not a timetable.
Yeah, let us know. I'm going to keep going down this rabbit hole and keep getting you thinking. Next one the government are going to do, in my made-up world, is they are going to be extremely strict on workload policies, and it's enforced. It's not what it currently is, which is, we've had a meeting about it and we think schools should consider these things to manage workload. It's no, this is completely enforced now and you're completely accountable for it. This is the workload policy for the UK, for teachers. Every school has to adhere to this, and if you don't, Ofsted are going to rip you apart. It
doesn't work, because Ofsted are going to rip you apart if you do adhere to it. Because if you do adhere to that workload policy, right, any workload policy that's introduced for teachers will decrease the amount of work teachers do. By definition, because we're saying there's a problem, we do too much work. So any workload policy that comes in will come with a decrease in work, which comes with a decrease in output, which comes with a decrease in standards for our children.
What if it's just like a managing change policy, where it's like you're still getting the things done, it's just that as SLT you're now completely accountable for
whatever it's dressed up as, right? Just honestly, the only way we fix workload is to reduce workload. So if you're spreading out, whatever you're doing, you can call it whatever you want. The only way to reduce workload is that teachers do less work. Right, so in the same time frame, less stuff gets done. Whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years. Okay, so manage workload. But instead of a year, we do it over 3.
So how do you make it work then?
Everything that you would have done in year 2 and 3, you're now not doing. So it is less work, right?
Sure.
And that does not work until we go back to the root system, which is how we're judged as teachers.
Sure.
So it's all well and good, and this is why the government will never take it seriously, because it comes down to 2 things, like this kind of theme that we've got here. We need
budget.
A strict. Well, no, we need forget budget, right? Okay. I'm thinking of ways we could actually do this.
Sure.
We could strip back the curriculum. And we could change how Ofsted judge schools. Okay, they're the 2 things that if we're not got budget to increase stuff, they have to change to actually reduce workload. And until those 2 things change, if we keep those the same, but we have the government going, why don't you do less work? Because there's a problem with... Why don't you do less? You're going to pay us more? No. Are you going to stop judging us in the same way? No. Okay, well, I can't do less work then, can I?
It's almost like the classic triangles where it's like pick any 2 things of the 3. It's like with adulthood, it's like sleeping,
time,
work,
money.
and time, whatever. And in this one, it's literally like funding, and then the 2 things you just said, which was Ofsted
Yeah,
you know,
Ofsted judgment lowering.
Probably,
like,
and stripping back the curriculum,
Yeah.
like managing work better.
Yeah. Two of those
like,
things.
pick two of those things, you can have any two.
Or just funding.
Just give us funding.
So if funding can't budge, which is the whole theme we've got, the fancy nice things. Oh, well, we're gonna come in and do a new job. We're gonna look after teachers. None of that matters unless you give us more money or strip back our time.
If Ofsted was sorted out though, right? If teachers were judged properly, would you be up for that idea? Having government-led enforced workload policies?
Yeah. Because to me, honestly, all I see there, right? Enforce. Okay, so if someone wants to do something, I think it would be insane to tell them they're not allowed to do it.
No, of course.
So when you say enforce,
but by enforce, I mean the policy is SLT aren't allowed to tell you to go and do this thing.
I think that's brilliant.
To a certain level.
And all I see that as, right, is just making us in line with pretty much any job ever.
Yeah.
So of course it's fine, because do you know what? You could be in school from 7:30 till 4:30, right? Let's think about that for a minute. That's 9 hours straight away. Teachers work through their breaks all the time. You might get half an hour to eat your lunch whilst you're doing something else maybe, or even you block it out and you're really good. That's still longer than a normal day's work, okay? And that is simply delivering lessons and marking your books and prepping the lessons, okay? No planning, no planning involved. So it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work straight away. You know, we get into this profession because we don't mind doing the extra stuff. Okay? Pay us more.
Yeah.
That is what you have to do. You have to keep paying. And if pay gets chipped away, we're at that balance now where it's like, cool, goodwill runs out.
Yeah. The counter argument to my own point there, because you just made me think of it, is this is the classic example, but on a massive, wider scale, of when the head teacher comes round to you at 5 o'clock and says, "Go home."
Are you going to change the policy?
It's like, well, the work doesn't actually go away, even if the policy does tell me to go home and have weekends, and I can't work at the weekends. It's like, I've got to get the freaking work done, though, haven't I? So, all of these things come with lots of.
And this is why I don't think that. This is why actually I don't think there's a solution.
Yeah.
Because I do honestly think it's either funding, that won't happen.
Yeah.
Lowering the standards for our children, that won't happen because its optics is terrible. Whether that's stripping out the curriculum, lowering Ofsted expectations, that won't happen. So we're left with the third one, which is what's currently happening, which is everyone closes their eyes and hopes teachers just make do.
Yeah, we just advise, the government just advises teachers to do the right thing, knowing that they can't really do it, but just saying, come on.
Just fit all this into the timetable. Just do a bit less. If we actually got you to sit down and
manage your workload, come on. We're not going to enforce it because we know it literally can't happen. Yeah, but just manage it.
Just manage it.
Yeah. Okay, last one from me then we'll end this conversation. Okay. Another government come along and say, we are now taking control of this, marking policies. Marking, we have a UK way of marking now. It's not up to schools anymore. Some of you got your fancy pants ways of marking. Some of you draconian, like Victorian ways of marking. This is how we mark in the UK now. We've decided. Research says this is best. Every school now must mark like this.
I don't like it. I don't like anything which is top down. You have to do this from the government. Look, this is. It's a double-sided coin because with that freedom, right? We currently have that freedom, I'd argue, but it's completely broken because the freedom is do it how you want, but you need to do all of these things at a really high level, but we're not going to give you any money for it.
Because often they're going to come in and they will judge you on it.
It's a classic government especially conservative in the last 10 to 15 years. It's like, we're going to give all the power to the local authorities. You're an academy trust, you've got all the power now, but here's your money pot and it doesn't cover everything. But you've got all the power to do what you want with that money. So when you decide not to hire a site manager, that's not down to me. But it is because you give them less money. So I see the same problem here, right? Schools right now can have whatever marking policy they see fit. Ofsted won't have a specific marking policy they want to see as long as it's consistent and the outcomes are good and it's consistent across the school. Like that's all well and good, okay? But you know the government then coming along and saying no, you have to do it this way is equally insane to me because there might just be a school where things work really well. And there might be a mixed way of marking where actually, you know, there's no written feedback, but maybe there is just a bit on their independent writing because we find that really works well with our children. Or you've got the flexibility as a teacher to be like, you know what, today, tomorrow, the next day, it's kind of a flow of learning. I don't really need to assess them because I'm going to carry on this lesson tomorrow. I'm going to have a whole week of doing money. Me individually assessing them every day is kind of pointless. So I'm just going to assess them at the end of the week because I can see where they've got to and I'm going to react as the week goes on. Next week, however, I'm just doing a shape standalone lesson. I really want to see how they got on there. So I'm going to assess them. That's fluid and that's good teaching. That's good assessment. Top down of saying, you know, you have to do it like this. There will be points where it's not suitable and that would be silly. So look, my overall point here, we need freedom as teachers to exercise our professional judgment because we are professionals and we've had training and a lot of us have been doing this for a long time and we know what's good for the children. However, until those, you know, what the government can do, which doesn't cost any money, but it looks bad optically, is kind of to strip things back.
I'm going to summarize what I think, because I think you've made really, really good points there, and that was a good discussion. So I'm seeing this as the freedom is good. We should maintain the freedoms that schools have. But if we want to fix the problems that do exist, which is my overall point really, was that I kind of want schools not to be unbelievably different to work in.
Which is true.
It's the undercurrents that affect the pressure and the culture that we experience that actually push schools to make these decisions which we're deeming as mental, which are the reasons I'm thinking, well, maybe the government needs to step in and stop this happening. Actually, the freedom's good. The government needs to step in and help to change the culture. Sure. They need to sort out Ofsted. They need to give us more funding. They need to stop teachers. I think they should come in like they're doing right now with the workload and work-life balance policy and stuff, and just be a bit more hard on that in terms of actually it is really, really important. We're going to change the culture. We're going to really encourage all heads to think it's really, really, really important, and you can kind of do with it how you will. But yeah, changing the culture really important.
Let's not pretend we can do less work though. No, and have the same standards.
Yeah.
You completely agree with
that. Yeah, so with funding, it's kind of like that fixes a lot of that. You get more people in. More people is better. 2 people can do the same. This one job that you've got to take 12 hours. Okay, 2 people do it 6 hours each. Done. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. Just give us the money to get the people in to do it. Basically. Yeah. So a depressing ending really is that none of this can possibly happen because the government, there'll never be the funding. It's too far gone. The Tories have stripped back education so badly now that it's irreparable. The curriculum can't be stripped back because the Tories have made it so ridiculously overhyped, and you need to learn so much stuff now that the only possible way now is backwards to actually make the curriculum good for our kids, and that will always look bad for government, so they'll never do it. And then what the third point was? Ofsted. Something about Ofsted.
Yeah, it was
probably could fix that one.
Yeah. I think we could fix Ofsted.
Let's start there.
That's the issue we're currently facing. I think there are some things we can do. I think schools need more autonomy. Yeah. I think the pressures. There's 3 pillars basically: government, Ofsted, SLT.
Yeah.
Honestly, as a teacher, you don't really have control over those things. So do what you can do as a teacher, and apply pressure where we can to these 3 pillars. Hopefully, it changes. Will it change? Am I quite confident that in 5 years' time, at the end of the next parliament, do I think that we will have transformed education? Absolutely not.
No,
absolutely not.
So let's finish up then, Dylan. I'll ask you the title of the podcast again. Do we need a new national curriculum?
No.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for joining us. Really, really depressing ending to that episode. No, I actually really enjoyed that conversation.
That was good.
And
let us know what you think, please. Get in touch at Teach Sleep Repeat Podcast. I say it so quickly, I worry that they can't. At Teach Sleep Repeat Podcast on Instagram. That's where we see everything. Send us a message. Come along for the ride.
We're off to Centre Parks now, so there'll probably be an episode next week. Don't know.
Yeah, we can reflect on our week, swimming and pretending that it's going to be a really nice holiday, but actually we've got 2 babies under a year, so it'll be really stressful.
Oh no!
Nice.
Well, tune in next week because we'll definitely have a reflection on the fact that we took 2 babies on holiday. It'll be a good laugh.
It'll be a good laugh.
See you then.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
See you now.
Bye. I say the last one.
See you later.
I'm the lead anchor. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.